When we hold on to grievance and pain from the past, we keep ourselves from being able to really move into our fullest expression of self. We need to practice forgiveness from the soul recovery perspective, dissipating the energy and releasing the past for good. If you're interested in this profound transformation, I invite you to join me in Colorado the weekend of June 8th and 9th to have an incredible experience with others on this same soul recovery journey. 2 full days of immersion in the soul recovery process where you will indeed leave transformed. You will be able to truly let go of these old pains and step into a new way of being. Check out the show notes for a coupon code and how to register. For this episode, I wanted to bring you an interview. This is Albert Flynn DeSilver, and he's written a book called Writing as a Path to Awakening, A Year to Becoming an Excellent Writer and Living an Awakened Life. And I thought that his story was really profound because, first of all, he's in recovery. He is recovered from alcoholism. We talk about how there's always other addictions that come into play that we're always working on. But his connection to higher power and his ability to use writing as a way to connect was really important for me to bring to the soul recovery community. I hope you'll stay to the end of the episode where he really shares deeply and tenderly and vulnerably about what's happening in his life today and how he is going through a difficult time and utilizing soul recovery, utilizing his spirituality, utilizing these tools to get to the other side. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Recover Your Soul podcast, a spiritual path to a happy and healthy life. My name is Rev Rachel Harrison. I started Recover Your Soul after having profound changes in my life from my recovery of alcoholism, codependency, and control addiction. I was guided to share the tools and principles of spirituality and soul recovery to help others transform their lives as mine was transformed. For us to overcome external circumstances, we need to turn the attention to ourselves, focusing on our inner change and healing. Positive results in our lives will follow. Welcome to the Recovery Soul podcast. This is Reverend Rachel Harrison, and I am really excited because today I have the honor of having a really special guest. And, you know, I don't do guests very often, and this is because I think that Albert will be really, really powerful and helpful to the soul recovery community. This is Albert Flynn DeSilver. Hi, Albert.
Hello, Rachel. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute joy to be with you, especially after that intentional prayer.
Thank you.
I have to say, that's really special. I've been on a bajillion podcasts, and no one has ever really done that in such a beautiful way. So thank you for that.
Thank you. For those of you that have spiritual coaching with me, you know that every session starts with a grounding, centering prayer. And I find that it's essential for me to connect with the part of me that is whole, that remembers that everything is working out for its highest good. Fun fact, before we get started, we were connected through one of your friends who is also a podcaster, and she had connected with me. And then she just sent an email saying, hey, I think you guys would be a good connection. You're in the same space. And I popped on and we had a short Zoom call. And we immediately realized that we went to school together here at CU, which I just think is so great.
I know. I love that. It's such a trip. And this was a long time ago.
A very long time ago. Let's not tell people how long ago it was. You got your bachelor's of fine art at CU, and I double majored and also got a bachelor's of fine art at CU. So we don't remember each other, but we had to have been in classes together.
I would imagine so. I don't know if you ever took any photo classes with Alex Sweetman.
I did. So I bet we were in the dark room at least.
That's so funny. Oh my God. He actually showed up in my memoir.
Oh, did he?
Oh, yeah. I didn't use his name, so let's not give away. But I loved my time there, and he saw something in me when no one else really did, which is why I stuck with photography and ended up graduating.
So he's talking about his memoir, Beamish Boy, which is one of his 2 books. And the reason I brought you on in particular is, first of all, you're sober, you're in
Yes.
recovery, and that's
32 years.
32 years. That's
Almost 32 years. 32 years in September 1st.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
From one of the addictions. Can't have just one when you're an addict.
No, they generally morph, right? So you think, I quit drinking, but I definitely recognize other aspects of myself that I'm constantly having to keep in check. That's for sure. The other book that you've written is called Writing as a Spiritual Path to Awakening, A Year to Becoming an Excellent Writer and Living an Awakened Life. And you were so kind to send me a copy, and I opened it up and immediately was so inspired by this truth of the awakened mind, of the awakened consciousness that is soul recovery, that is this spiritual path to a happy and healthy life that can come from so many different ways. And because writing is something that I suggest to my clients, I was excited to bring you on to talk more about how writing's been part of your awakening and part of your recovery, and to be able to share that with the soul recovery community.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, writing as a path to awakening. It's it's kind of a true statement in terms of just my journey. And especially in terms of recovery. And when you talk about soul recovery, I think also in terms of creativity recovery, they're not really mutually exclusive, but oftentimes in our, when we get knocked out of our souls and when we get knocked into disconnection and addiction and et cetera, we lose our creativity. And so for me, that journey they've been kind of dual paths.
Mm-hmm.
When I got sober, I was, I was trying to figure out, like, who am I? What am I? What am I doing here? Well, first of all, I had to survive. So that was the first miracle, was survival. And then I had never really thought about writing. It was photography and trying to see the world in a unique way that brought me back towards the center. And then there was a fateful experience in graduate school. After I left CU, I went to San Francisco to go to grad school for photography, and I fell in with all kinds of different artists, people who are doing performance art and computer art and painting and sculpture and everything. And then I had an art history teacher who was also a poet, Bill Berkson, who sent me off to a poetry reading. I wasn't really into poetry. I didn't know anything much about it, but he sort of sent me off to this reading. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go. I don't have anything else going on. And I go to this thing, and it turns out it's the launch reading for the Norton Anthology of Postmodern American Poetry. And it was like an all-star cast at the Cowell Theater in San Francisco. And my mind was just blown. My heart was blown open. And I remember hearing someone quoting the poet Jack Spicer from one of his famous poems that was actually about photography in some ways. And he said, unbind the dreamers, poet be like God. And I was like, what? Like, sign me up for that. I didn't have that soul connection necessarily to photography at the time, but this was a direct kind of calling. It's like, unbind the dreamers. I was like, I'm a dreamer. Poet be like God. I don't know what God is, but seems ethereal and beautiful, and I want to align with that. And so that was the night I actually started writing.
Interesting. And were you sober yet? This is right after you had quit drinking, that you were having this opening up of your awarenesses, the ability to see things differently, feel things differently?
Yes. Yeah. So I had been free of drinking. There were other substances that came into play around that time, but I wouldn't describe them as addictive. I didn't have an addictive relationship to them. And that's a whole other story that we can talk about if you want. But I was, for all intents and purposes, I was I was sober and confronted with like the immediacy of my wound,
Yeah.
I will say.
I think when we wake up, when we have that moment where we stop using what felt like the solution, when we stop
Mm-hmm.
using the thing that, for me, drinking initially wasn't because I wanted to shut down and be away from pain. It was fun, it was
Right.
celebration. And then
Mm-hmm.
it quickly became a way to cope with the hole in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was 48, so I've only been sober for 5 years. You've got all those years, but I found that there was this opening for truth to speak to me that I couldn't hear before. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's so profound how that happens, those little moments, that phrase that just opened that window for you.
Yeah, and this was also right around the time that I met a friend who sent me to Spirit Rock, and she was going to sit at this place called Spirit Rock Meditation Center. I didn't know anything about meditation or what that was, and it was this Monday night thing in a trailer out in the San Geronimo Valley, where I now live. And there was Jack Kornfield holding court and teaching about compassion and loving kindness and being with yourself and stillness. And all these things were like totally alien concepts to me because I was just so, amped up and in my head, totally disconnected from my heart. And then I remember one of those early times that I went there, he devoted this whole Dharma talk to poetry. And I was like, oh, this is like, I'm getting it from all sides. This poetry thing is totally coming at me. All I could do was listen and surrender into that to the best of my ability at the time.
So poetry was your first avenue into writing. On your bio, it says that
Yes.
you were poet laureate for Marin County. So, I mean, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, that came later, not until 2008. But yeah, I got heavy into poetry after that reading, which I believe was in 1994. I just hit the poetry bandwagon. I bought the anthology. I started buying books from all the poets that I liked in the anthology. I started going to readings in San Francisco. I started writing myself, and then I heard about this organization called California Poets in the Schools. They hire professional poets and they bring them into the classroom to teach kids not about poetry or to recite and memorize poems, but to write their own poems from their own experience. And I was like, wow, that's freaking awesome. I want to do that. So I started hovering about and going to their workshops and readings and things. And eventually I ended up training with and got a mentor. And within a couple of years, I was in the classroom teaching poetry.
If you're ready for soul recovery, as a spiritual coach, I can support your healing to help make real changes that will bring you a life of peace, happiness, connection, and abundance. You can also work in smaller groups by taking a deep dive in a Zoom workshop or with me in person at a retreat or an event. Join others on the soul recovery path once a month for the free Zoom support group or daily on the private Facebook page. Visit the website recoveryoursoul.net to book coaching sessions with me or find all the information you need about soul recovery, dates that are coming up, and how to register for those groups and workshops. To support the podcast and the community, check the links in the show notes to make a small monthly donation or a one-time donation of your choice that will make a huge impact to support this community and the soul recovery mission. Together, we can do the work that will recover your soul. Do you think poetry, like for someone who doesn't write, so in the soul recovery community, we're learning how to turn the attention to ourselves. We're learning how to quit needing everybody else to be okay for us to be okay. I have the soul recovery steps, which have a likening to 12-step, but have their own more spiritual flavor. We're learning how to connect with parts of ourselves that maybe were shut down. And do you feel like poetry is a way to be able to move into that for people? What would you suggest in terms of early writing for people to start to connect with their heart?
Absolutely. I mean, how do I know what I think or what I feel unless I write it down?
Mm.
I mean, I suppose you can sing it, you can record it auditorily, but there's something about the process and the practice of writing. I talk about this a little bit in the book about how writing is one of our most intensive points of focus and attention that we have as human beings. So it's sort of like when we're writing, especially when we're writing uninhibited and we're just speaking to ourselves or we're speaking to the Great Spirit, and there's no intermediary saying, oh, this has to be good or this has to be something to be out in the world. But no, it's just me and you on the page. And I'm just I'm just reflecting on what I'm really experiencing this moment. That's powerful because there's a lot of things that are happening in that moment. There's, you're gaining clarity. You're like, oh, wow, I didn't know I felt this way about XYZ. And you're also releasing. So there's this kind of energetic release, and then there's also an energetic mirroring back that happens with writing. And when you take it to that next level of poetry, where it's starting to become shapely, as Allen Ginsberg might have said, then that's a whole nother thing where you're sort of adding in, layers of conversation with perhaps an audience, but you're integrating the elements of language. You're starting to engage with language on another on another level to accentuate your communion, I think,
Right.
with spirit.
Right. For me, journaling has been such a profound part of my healing. And I don't consider myself a good writer. And there's this sort of constant conversation with my husband and I where he wants to edit what I write down to this. He went to CU as well and remembers the writing class that we all had to take in school, which was this, how do you
Can we just pause there for a second,
Yeah.
though? I should have done this earlier. But like without, take away that self-assessment, right? You began by saying, I don't consider myself a good writer. But that's just story, right? That's just ideas coming from some external voice we don't know. And, it may be your husband, maybe a teacher, maybe a guardian or parent from a million years ago. But a writer is somebody who writes. And so if you allow yourself to just be with that writing and be in love with that process, then you're a writer. And good, bad assessment, evaluation is not your business ultimately. Right?
Which is such a great reminder, because in soul recovery, my constant message is non-judgment, non-judgment.
Yeah.
But
sorry, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're welcome to. I love it. What I have found, and I so appreciate what you're saying, because what I found is that when I'm in my journal, I can let go of that external thing that says I'm a good or bad writer, because it's really just about me and my heart.
Yes.
And it's taking the spin that can go on in my mind about what the story is, or what my pain is, or what my excitement is, or what my fear is. And it's giving it a place to settle down and work itself out. And through that writing over the years has been profound change in my life about how I connect with myself, how I connect with my higher power, what I write about. And the more healing I've had, the less I write about how pissed I am at the world. And the more I write that feels like I'm being given the voice of healing and the voice of wisdom and guidance. And then that's given me more strength, more compassion to myself to go out in the world and write from that soul recovery perspective that is let go of my husband's wanting to edit my stuff down to some academic something, and have more ability to say, this is my voice. This is how it sounds. And I don't want to take away my voice. I don't need it to look academic.
Right. Yeah. Do you know, I have a perfect example of this. I mean, there's so many great examples. My friend Rosemary Watola Tromer, great poet, and she writes a poem a day, no matter what, and sends it out into the world. And she's been doing this for years. And it's amazing the consistency of truth and authentic voice. I think of someone like Rupi Kaur, who's now like a million times over bestseller, started just writing very simple, very beautiful, immediate, raw. Well, they read kind of journalistically, like private journalistics, but then they have this echo and this flavor that we can all relate to. And, fast forward 10 years and she's on tour in cities all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know her work, but she's a force of nature, just incredible.
I'll have to look it up. I love that. I'm learning so much more about everything that it makes me want to gobble up and soak up. And one of the things I was reading in your book, Writing as a Path to Awakening, one of the things I love about this book is that it isn't meant to be sat down and digested in one sitting. It's really intended to give yourself a year, which is what it takes for awakening. It takes time to awaken. It takes
At
time
least.
to change. Yeah. So just to go back to my original thought, which is in the February, you talk about different ways of reading that you can skim and dive in deep, use a swimming as the idea around it. And I loved that because I feel like I'm so desiring to get information. What I got from that is I got permission to not take the deep dive into everything. The reminder that you can just skim over some content, because I feel like there's a part of me that feels like I need to really hunker down and digest into everything, and I don't have time.
Yeah, so there's that element of savoring. So I did create this framework just so that people could pace their development around both the writing and the meditation as a complementary dual path, and that it's not a rush. We're not rushing to the finish line. There is no finish line, and yes, it's a year, but it could be 10 years, it could be 100 years, it could be 100 lifetimes. But may this be a springboard in this lifetime to just new ways of thinking about the possibilities, for you as a creative person, and not just for writing, but for other arts. There's a couple of different exercises, one in particular around photography, which I think we already mentioned, one of my great loves of just using photographs to kind of launch into ideas and feelings around being in the world.
One of the things about awakening and soul recovery, in the sense that I think my community has, is we're learning how to expand our inner selves, how to trust our viewpoint, how to trust our feelings, how to not be codependent, how to not put other people's needs first. And creativity is such a great marker for that, because so often we're taking care of the whole world and then we don't do for ourselves. And then people think like, oh, to be creative, I need to be a great painter, or I need to be a great photographer. And in soul recovery, what I'm constantly trying to remind people is that this is unique to you. And it doesn't have to be something that is recognized or approved of in the world. It's really for your own inner experience, and to learn that we can have our own inner experience, and that's valid, and that we are worthy in it, and that we are fulfilled in that, to not even need somebody else's recognition. And so I love that creativity allows for that avenue of self-learning and self-love and self-expression.
Yes, absolutely. And the only way that I know of to get back to that is through silence and stillness. If we consider there is so much noise in the world these days, especially online and with computers and our phones and billboards and all this information, to be in silence, to reconnect with that still small voice within, right? Which is giving us this conversational portal to our soul. We need that silence. We need that stillness. And it's rare in this day and age, and we have to claim it because we deserve it. I think it brings us really back to our humanity. I think part of the a lot of the destruction that we see in the world, the world, when I say the world, I mean like the media world and the political world and all of those structures. There's so much damage there because people are totally consumed in information. They're totally responding and reacting constantly to externals, and they're completely disconnected from the internal, from the silence and stillness. I think they're terrified of it, honestly.
Well, we don't know how. We don't know how. I know people who say, I don't want to meditate because I don't want to actually hear what's going on inside of there. We're afraid of it.
Yes.
But one of the things I loved, just looked at the book that I wanted to touch on was some people think of meditation purely as that sitting in the silence and that you're supposed to, wipe everything from your mind, which I'm always saying it's not about wiping. It's about learning how to come back, learning how to be mindful. But you also have, like, the February chapter has a reading meditation. So tell me about the different kinds of meditations that you've used in your life to help you in your awakening.
Yeah, so there is periods of silence. And of course, it helps to be guided. So I do a lot of guided meditations. There's guided meditations in the book. I think lead-in words can be very powerful, especially when they're well-intended. Your prayer to begin this podcast was a perfect example of that. That sets the tone. It sets the intentionality. It brings us to a place of entry, gentle entry. And I think it's just a balance point, really, of not allowing us to be guided in, but not cluttered about after that, and so,
do you
but
think
it does.
Writing is a meditation?
That's an interesting question. I get a little uncomfortable when people talk about, gardening is meditation or writing is meditation, or, there's certainly these activities, they have a kind of concentrated quality to them, or a meditative quality to them, because you can get immersed and you can kind of go into a certain kind of flow state. But I do like to qualify it as different, not better than, but just simply different. There's something very different about sitting in stillness and in silence and being with your breath, being with that uncertainty, being with whatever emotion is true for you in this moment, being with whatever sensation is in you in this moment, and allowing yourself to expand around that and to look a little more closely at that. And to do that, I do think it's very important to do this slowly and with support, because as simple as it is, it's not for the faint of heart. Like, it can be, especially for those of us who have experienced trauma and abuse and violence, it can be really intense. I remember I tell this story about these first time I did a day-long retreat at Spirit Rock, and I was probably 27 years old or 26 years old or something, and I was the guy in the back of the room curled up in the fetal position, just bawling my eyes out for no reason during the meditation. And it was because my nervous system finally got quiet enough to experience the true grief and the true sadness of being disconnected from family and all of it. So it helps to just get a lot of support around it.
Yeah.
To go for 5 minutes, to go for 2 minutes, and then build up until things start to expand.
Yeah, I love that reminder that it doesn't have to be hours long, and it doesn't have to look a certain way.
No.
That just starting little bits at a time is all that you need. And do you still, I know for me, I'm still figuring it out in such a profound way. I feel like my life continues to unfold deeper layers of awakening and awareness. What does that look like for you in terms of your craft and your way of connecting with your higher power? What does that unfolding and continued journey look like?
It's that's a great question. And this is kind of hard to talk about for me, but I'll do it anyways because we can do hard things, right? Isn't there a podcast with that name?
Glennon Doyle's podcast.
Oh, that's right. That's where it is. Yeah, we were talking earlier about going from one addiction to another. So I know that I'll never drink again. Like I have no desire for alcohol. I see it as a poison for me. And so that's easy. Like I don't have to worry about that because it's like the equality is just like, no, you're going to ruin your life if you do this, hands down. So, but with other stuff around, and in my case, these days, it's more around issues of money and spending and debt and things like that. That's my edge right now, is working with that and going back to the beginning and being like, I thought I had this stuff figured out. Like I'm 55 years old. Like I've made it this far. I have an amazing life. I live in Northern California. I hit the relationship lottery jackpot. Like those things are super stable and amazing. I'm totally in touch with my creativity. And yet there are these things, around money. Like, I don't know what that is, but I'm working with that. That's the layer I'm peeling back. And so I'm having to go like with my spiritual practice. It's like, oh, I thought I had this, like this sort of deep awareness around all these things. And then in this particular area, it's revealing a whole nother layer, like when you go back through the steps, it's like, oh, I thought I was this person, but no, there's actually this character defect that I have not ironed out that needs to be re-examined. And it's a call for humility at every moment. It's a call for reconnect. Like you just start to realize, oh, this is an endless journey. Like I thought that I would get to certain like finish lines, as it were, but no, it just kind of keeps expanding and keep unraveling, keep asking HP, as it were, keeps asking me to go deeper.
Right.
Okay, no, you don't have this. Like bring it down a notch, Albert. You got to eat some crow here and get humble and revisit some of these things.
Thank you for your vulnerability in that and that honesty, because I think that for me, one of the things that I've had such clarity on is that piece that says, this work is so valuable and so important, and my life is so much fuller and I am more connected. But being checked in is a lot more work than it was to be checked out. The humility, it's interesting when you were saying that, the humility for me is a reminder to stay vigilant of my spiritual practice, and that addictions of all kinds, which generally are around control, which is what soul recovery is around, are sneaky,
super sneaky.
Yeah. And so I think that, I've had success in one place, and then I watch my discomfort or my desire to soothe myself in some other way sneak up. And if I don't do my routine, and it doesn't have to be so strict that you can't go anywhere or do anything, but if I don't have spirituality in my life every day, the 12 steps says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. If I don't do my spiritual practice, my spiritual awakening like leaves me, it slips away. And then I'm back in control. I'm back in pain and in suffering again.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. I mean, okay. So here's a perfect example, and this is hard to say out loud, but I basically don't get to teach writing anymore right now. I should say right now. I can't figure it out financially. I just cannot figure it out. I've tried for many years. I've applied all the control, all the willpower that I possibly can to make this thing work. I have the book, right? I've got the platform. I've got supposedly the followers and all this nonsense. But it's just not enough to create a sustainable business. So this is just an example. And so I'm having to reassess and, look at employment and look at different ways of supporting myself at this point. And this is really, really hard for me to say, out loud. This is really hard for me to, and I'm basically in the process of shutting down my business entity as we speak. And I can't believe I'm saying this out loud on a podcast, but like, I just want to be real about this. This is life, this is the journey of life. And I don't want to be pretending anymore. Like, this is because you can pretend pretty good online. You can put up a facade and you can have the nice website and the shiny objects, and people think, oh my God, wow, you're just living the dream. Someone said that to me the other day. This was about a year or two ago, and I was on the road going to Colorado. As a matter of fact, I was teaching at Shambhala Mountain Center, and I had a box of books in my car, and I had my mountain bike with me, and I stopped in Salt Lake City. And I just ran into some people, and I met them, and I told them, I said, oh yeah, I'm on this little tour. I'm doing some teaching, and I've got this new book out. And they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. You're living the dream. Right. I was like, yeah, I'm living the dream. And I wasn't, I was in a dream, total dream. This was not a financially stable trip. I lost money on that trip, and it pushed me further into debt and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, here I am.
It's so profound about that. Thank you again for sharing that, because I also think that we have this perception of what it means to be something. Like that if I am a writer, then I need to have best-selling books, or I need to be a teacher. And that comes back to, I've been listening to a lot of Ram Dass lately, of the role that we play, of the I am that we claim ourselves. And yet, from the spiritual perspective, there's the truth that it's unlimited, right? That we can have and be and do whatever we desire. And yet I think sometimes our desire gets pinpointed on a pinpoint that feels like that's what society says to be a success. Albert, for you to be a successful writer, you have to have this thing, versus
totally.
What if writing is the opening of your awareness and touching people's lives, and it doesn't mean that that it looks a particular way? Right. I've let go of this in my own thing, which is I don't make a ton of money doing what I do, but I'm helping people, and that means more to me than anything else. And at this moment, I'm providing my part of the family budget that is my responsibility. But that may change, but am I Rev Rachel, and this is my, I'm stamping in the dirt, this is who I am. And when I start to do that, I lose traction of what my purpose is in my own internal healing.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, I'm supposed to be a writer, teacher guy. And, I thought I would be on tour and making a living and doing all this. And and I have at times, but it's, in the long term, it's just not sustainable. And so I'm supposed to be doing something else to manage that economic imperative. And I'll figure that out, what that is. And but it does get entangled, and when I do, and I know this from talking to people in my community and just the feedback I get, that I'm in this process of helping people and inspiring people and supporting people on their spiritual journey, on their creative journey. And it's like, okay, where's the money?
Right.
And one could get all like, embittered about that. It's like, okay, well, maybe just not supposed to come from that place. And that's okay. So I'm, willing to pivot and to adjust and know that there's something else out there.
How are you caring for your internal self? What is the process that you're using? I mean, this is soul recovery, what you're talking about, to be gentle to yourself, to love yourself, to still feel your value and your worth, even though this particular dream didn't end up looking like what you thought it wanted to look like. How are you doing that way?
Well, what I always do, which is staying connected to my writing, which nourishes me no matter what. staying close to my meditation practice, staying close to my spending time in nature practice, and being with the non-human world, which in our little neck of the woods is just beaming and radiating everywhere right now. Like the flowers are going off, the birds are going off. It's really magical right now. To stay open and connected to that is extremely nourishing. And to get out on my mountain bike, because otherwise I go totally berserk.
Yeah. I think what's really coming to me is that just that profound awareness of how the trust of spirit, the trust of our emotional, spiritual growth means to really allow yourself to feel all those feelings, to feel the grief, to feel the loss, and to remind ourselves that we are whole and okay, and that we are being guided and led, and that grasping that we have, it's in all of us. This need to have certainty, or to have it come out a certain way, or to be a certain thing. And all spirituality says, if you can realize that you are nothing, you will become everything. And that's so hard. And then when it's presented to you, here's an opportunity to learn it. You're like, I don't want to learn that. I want to learn it without the lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. I mean, it's how to sort of balance that abstraction with your feet on the earth in the real world, with the demands of a capitalist society. It's the work. It's the real work. And yeah, it's humbling.
Yeah.
Humbling.
And to me, I'm cautious of the word humbling, in the sense that most people can let that make it feel like you're supposed to be smaller than. And my real take on his, quote unquote, his will, his guidance as a metaphysical minister, my take, especially in soul recovery, of the power of, is when we are connected to spirit, when we are connected to that knowing that we are held by love, that the humbling is the allowing the guidance of that still small voice that wants the greatest for you, wants the fulfillment for you, but we're grasping to what we thought that was supposed to look like. And allowing the belief that it's not about making you feel smaller, but leading you in a direction that may be different than what you thought, but is, when you look back, you go, as we have all done in our lives, even including being alcoholics, it's like, oh, I needed that part. That was an essential piece of my learning. If I had held on tightly to this part of me, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am here today.
Right. Yeah. So the question that I keep coming back to is like, okay, how can I serve? How do you want me to serve now? I was sort of imposing how can I serve onto my ideal way of serving, which, is sort of like, okay, it's a little too much elbowing in, a little too much controllingness there. So I'm really trying to ask these days, how do you want me to serve Great Spirit? Like, what does that look like? I thought it was supposed to look like teaching meditation and teaching writing and being that catalyst for transformation for people, being that system. But, it can show up in any way, shape, or form. It can be observed. If you think about certain special interactions you've had with people in the world, in your daily life, when you're present and when you're open to them, whether it's a janitor, whether it's a cashier, whether it's a nurse, whether it's an administrator, when you offer that transmission of love and presence in a moment, like that's service. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm here, like teacher guy with the book, Yeah. Like, no, it can be, just step back and allow it to be what it wants to be.
It reminds me actually of something you said in the beginning of our talking about the photography teacher at CU,
Oh, yeah.
that he saw you before you could see yourself, and that he may never know what that interaction was. And that we often don't know how we're showing up for people and the profound impact that we can have on people in ways that we'll never
Right.
see.
Well, and here's the thing about that that's very subtle. And it wasn't like, oh, Albert, you're an awesome photographer. I think you're fabulous. These are great pictures. It was more like I didn't get yelled at, right? Or I didn't get overly criticized. That there was a certain level of just kind of either calm acceptance or curiosity in that interaction.
Mm-hmm.
But I did feel that that there he's you know what I think he saw was that I was committed and that I was interested. That's what he saw. And I think that's a huge piece for creativity. Like if you want to make a life in creativity or in writing or in dance or in art, it's like, are you obsessed with this topic, with this subject? Are you into it? Like, are you really going to delve deeply and explore it and remain curious and stay steady on that journey? Or is it just kind of a thing you want to get a grade for and move on?
And and just piggybacking on what we were just talking about previously, that dedication is so essential. And yet in the end, the happiness comes from within, the satisfaction of life comes from within. And so our obsession over anything, I've been talking a lot about like the light and the dark of everything. So we have these character defects, these defense mechanisms, these personality traits, whatever you want to call them, and how we can get hard on ourselves for something that feels like it's supposed to be, one of our negative traits. But really, there's a light and a dark in everything. There's an aspect of it that has allowed us to get to where we wanted to be in our lives. And that drive, that dedication has such a value. And then it gets a little gray where it starts to muddy the waters of our lives. And then it turns into darkness where we're determined to make that work at all costs. And we leave everything else to the side. And we think that it's going to make us what's happy. And our ego gets involved. And it's not a judgment of, oh, that's bad. It's more an awareness that this is the journey, that everything flows from the light into the dark, and to accept and love all of it, and to move towards the light, to notice when we're in the dark and to move to the light and to love ourselves completely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the creative journey, it's just, surrendering to the process and not the product, right? You've heard it before, but, I'm struggling with this, because who doesn't want to be acknowledged? And that acknowledgement is publication, it's readings, it's, I'm not doing this. I'm doing this for myself, and I'm doing it for the world. And I'm trying to get to that place of not seeing a separation between those two devotions.
That's a powerful place to be. That's a powerful place to be. Well, I thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly and vulnerably. And I feel like it touches on the journey that we're all on some level of finding our place in the world, utilizing creativity to attach to ourselves and get connected to ourselves and our higher power. And I really recommend your book to anybody, not only for people who, like me, I want to learn I want to write a book someday. I want to write the soul recovery book. So it's empowering me to,
may it be so,
to write my soul recovery book. But more, I want continued tools to be on my spiritual journey and to be on my path of awakening, which isn't always easy. It's a very windy road.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Total blessing. This has been really fun.
Yeah, I agree. And I know that we're going to continue to have interaction on some level, because the universe doesn't do this kind of thing by mistake.
I hope so.
Good. Thank you so much, Albert.
Thank you, Rachel. Be well.
Thank you. Until next time, namaste. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Recover Your Soul podcast and being a part of this community. If you loved this episode and you want even more, there is a bonus episode every Friday. This is by subscription. You can access this by being a Patreon member, and in that there are 3 tiers of giving to choose from, or by being an Apple Podcast subscriber. After you have become a subscriber or a member, there's an entire year of back episodes to help support your journey, in addition to that new episode every Friday. I really encourage you to take advantage of this deeper dive of soul recovery and additional content, and I thank you for supporting the community by doing so. I invite you to go to the website recoveryoursoul.net and hit subscribe so that you can receive email updates, and I also would love for you to follow on social media. Recover Your Soul is on YouTube, Facebook. We have that private Facebook page. It's on Instagram and TikTok. And if you look for Rev Rachel Harrison on Insight Timer, you can have additional guided meditations. I'm here to support you on your soul recovery journey as your spiritual or life coach. This is unique to every single person. There are 9 steps of soul recovery that are my general guide of leading you through what is supposed to be not a long-term, but a short time together. There's no long-term commitment. And as a matter of fact, you can use the coupon code in the show notes and just see if it feels like a good fit. This is my way of helping you to discover the fullness of who you are. I've had such a major transformation in my life, and I'm here to help you support your transformation as well. It is a unique path to every single person. It's not intended to be a really long-term relationship. It's meant to coach you to make deep and real changes with action in your life. Together, we can do the work that will recover your soul. The Recover Your Soul podcast and its content is for educational purposes only and is not allied or representative of any organizations or religions. It's based on the opinions and experience of Rev Rachel Harrison. Recover Your Soul claims no responsibility to any persons or entity for any liability, loss, damage, or cause alleged to be caused directly or indirectly as a result of its use. Applications or interpretations of the information represented herein. Take what you need and leave the rest.